Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, Burundi continues to boil, and it appears as though the heat is too much to handle for the United Nations Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region. As a result, he's quit his role facilitating talks between rival factions in Burundi's political crisis, but is staying on in his broader regional position. Said Djinnit has hosted dialogue between the government, the ruling party, and the opposition parties and civil society groups to try to resolve a row over President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid for a third term. But there have been only limited signs of progress. A series of elections have been delayed by weeks of unrest and violent clashes between police and protesters, plunging the nation into its worst crisis in a decade and alarming a region which has a history of ethnic killing. Now, the envoy has faced criticism from the opposition, who says he was biased towards the government, and that's a charge he's dismissed. We're joined now from Ibadan by career diplomat Professor Ogunsanwo. He will be speaking to us concerning this development. Professor Ogunsanwo, thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
Now, Professor, how do you interpret this move by the United Nations envoy?
I think it's very clear. It's clear evidence that he believes that in the circumstances which he finds himself now, there is not much positive contribution he can make. If you are mediating or you are in the middle, as it were, trying to get two sides to accept to go in a particular direction, and one of them believes that you are biased, and the other one you consider intransigent, the only option open to you is to throw in the towel, which he has done. Of course, he could have said, well, I will continue until they tell me openly that they don't want me anymore. But he's representing the United Nations, and therefore he has a personal responsibility. If he goes on and the whole thing is then messed up, he will still be blamed that in spite of the fact that he was there, that he could not achieve magic. There is no magic you can achieve when two politicians in this type of situation, the head of state and the other group, when they disagree fundamentally in terms of the direction in which they want their country to go.
Now, Professor, at this point, with that move, can we say with the quitting of the envoy that the United Nations has literally washed its hands clean of the Burundi crisis?
No, not necessarily. It depends on the permutations and some of the pressures that will go on. The Secretary General may be pressurized to name another person that would try and do the job. You recall that there was also a personal envoy of the United Nations Secretary General to the conflict in Syria, and the former foreign minister of Algeria. He went on and on until he felt that there was no way he could continue, and he said he was resigning.
Professor,
There's another person now who is in charge of that. So it can get to that point where the Secretary General feels that he needs to name somebody else.
Professor,
so this time, yes, there must be proper inquiry as to whether or not it will be acceptable to both sides. It must be acceptable to both sides before he can make progress.
Professor, was this the right time to have made this move?
Well, I believe that the person himself alone is the one who can decide that. No one else can decide it for him because he accepted that task, that responsibility. And when he gets to the point where he believes that no progress is being made and no progress can be made by him because one side, openly accuses him of bias, even though he believes he's trying to be neutral and helpful. But there is not much that he can do.
Well, Professor, just before I let you go, I'd like to ask if we might see any kind of consequences following this development.
I said there are two possibilities. One is for another person to be named to take up the position. The other possibility is to allow the situation situation in Burundi to sort itself out. And it will sort itself out. What the neighbors of Burundi are afraid of is the consequences of the instability. Thousands of people leaving the country and going to neighboring states. That will create problems for these states. And if eventually there is violence, the type of situation that they had seen before, which ended in 2005, if there is that type of violence, the neighboring states do not want to go back to that type of situation. And so the international community, as it were, which of course includes immediately the neighboring states and the wider the African Union and the other countries, have, they believe they have a responsibility to try and protect the people of Burundi themselves from whatever machinations and conflict you may have between politicians.
Well, Professor Ogunsanwo, thank you very much for your input. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you.